This podcast is sponsored by Ego AI. AI is here to assist and enhance human-centric language learning and teaching, not replace or negate it. Established theories remain relevant in guiding practice. Learners need comprehensible input, meaningful output and interaction, fluency practice, and feedback. Ego AI helps students reach the recommended 2,500 plus hours of intentional study with a comprehensive library of AI-generated, human-proofread lessons and activities, allowing them to develop all 4 skills while providing teachers with essential insights into student progress. Ego AI.
Welcome everyone to JALT Podcast. I'm your host for the day, Robert Remmerswaal, and I'm joined by Geoff Carr and Joe Suzuki-Parker. Today we're talking about listening as well as AI and copyright. All right, so first off, section 1, who is listening to what? So we know that our smartphones are always listening to us, right? If you're just having a conversation about maybe getting some new glasses, suddenly all the ads you see on your computer, your phone, they're all going to be showing you glasses, right? So if we're always being listened to, maybe it's important to think about what we're listening to as well, or more in particular, let's think about what are our students listening to when it comes to language learning. But before we dive into that, we actually have a call to action for you, our listeners. If any of our listeners, contributors want to come and talk to us about anything they want to see on JALT Podcast, come do so at the conference. We're going to have a little booth. We'd like to maybe even do a little interview, get your voice on our podcast as well. You can also email us anytime at program@jaltcall.org or directly through any system you want to contact us with. So Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, email. Don't be afraid to slide into our DMs. All right. So if we're talking about listening techniques, I guess the listening SIG comes to my mind. Are you guys aware of the listening SIG?
I have heard about it. I don't think I have attended any of their events, Rob. Joe?
No. Yeah, same here. I have heard of them, but I have not actually attended their events.
Yeah. Well, they're actually one of the. We were just speaking a little bit before this podcast about the upcoming SUTLIF conference, and they were the inaugural topic was listening. So it's about as far as I know about them, actually. But I've been using a lot of text-to-speech, a lot of voice-to-text recently, at least as far as Moodle goes. And it got me thinking, like the old... I guess, do you guys have experience using like kind of the old text-to-speech? It's a little robotic compared to the new AI versions that they have out?
I've definitely used it. I used to actually use it when working out at the gym. I'd queue up a book in an e-reader of some kind, and if I was doing something where I couldn't be looking at the screen, like if I was walking or doing steps, maybe I'd be reading a book, but then otherwise I'd just have my phones in, and I'd be listening to the same book. And you're right, the old text-to-speech was... Yeah, it got you there, but it was, like you said, it was completely robotic. There was no expression, and there was very little understanding of what the overall structure of what was being read included in how the speech was created.
Yeah, I agree. I can go even further back, though, Geoff. We're talking like Radiohead, Paranoid Android. That's some of the first robotic voice stuff. I remember when I was a kid, getting on the computer when Microsoft had its first TTS, the text to voice, and that was so much fun. Of course, we just fed it a bunch of bad words all the time.
No, yeah.
But yeah,
As
you're right,
one
Robert.
does.
These have come a far way since those days. TTS, or text to speech, is absolutely amazing now. It's pretty much on par with human voice. I think they've done some research actually to see if humans can tell the difference, and overwhelmingly they just can't. It's so close.
Okay, on par with human voice.
I think so, yeah.
That's setting an extremely high bar right there, and it also sounds like something that would you'd really have to be very aware of the standards of evaluation that are going on to really accept that kind of result. What are they really talking about when it comes to that? Is it just how you hear it, or is there more?
Yeah, I think it's very similar to the Turing test. Where basically, the thing with the Turing test is you don't hear a voice. You just get the text and you read it, and you have to tell whether or not the text that you're getting is from a robot or a real actual human.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm guessing a lot of these studies have probably focused on something similar, where they have a real voice and then they have a robotic voice say the exact same thing, and then or a TTS engine say the exact same thing, and they have to tell which is which.
Okay, so you're talking more sort of a distinguishment test there, right? Maybe they have the same text and they have a human read it out, and then they have a text-to-speech engine read it out, and then you get people trying to figure out which is which. All right, I guess I could see that.
Something like that. I think there have been some tests too that have looked at more breaking down just not the difference, like how accurate like a human voice and a TTS voice is, but they have also looked at how well TTS voices are understood compared to a human voice, the percentage of tokens or words that are understood, and those have shown some super high comparability with human voice to TTS. It's something in the 90s, I can't remember, but it's very close, 90%.
I could imagine TTS, like these AI TTS, getting higher than some humans or some dialects, perhaps. And it just makes me think
who could you ever be talking about there, Rob? I mean, surely not people not present who have Scottish accents or anything. No, it couldn't be that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, it just reminds me of like British people doing American accents. Some of them do a pretty good job. Like it took me a while, like on House, to realize, like, wait, I can't place your accent. Yeah. Like I don't really know. Like it's a little too general. Like it's not quite specific enough. I can kind of, but like it took a long time to realize. Or I think it took me to hearing him in an interview to realize, and then it was broken, and I was like, yeah, you're not. Right. You're not American.
He's actually a Brit. Mm-hmm. That's the truth. But I mean,
so
way
Geoff,
back when in. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, you were asking about some of the how would they measure this stuff? Apparently, it seems like there is what's called a mean opinion score, is what they use for these tests from a scale from 1 to 10. Listeners rate naturalness essentially, and it looks like they've run these tests on OpenAI, TTS, 11 Labs, and Volley, which are probably the top 3 most natural studio quality voices. And all of these consistently score around 4.3 to 4.6, while human speech hovers at around 4.6 to 4.8. So pretty dang close.
Yeah,
that really is. And okay, Rob, all joking aside and that sort of thing, we know that not just accent but also dialect can play a significant role in comprehension for language learners, right? So
totally.
Are we saying that maybe there's a chance that these new AI-mediated text-to-speech engines or apps, whatever, there's just a ton of different stuff that seems to be coming out now, might actually be more helpful for some students in terms of pure listening practice, putting aside the human element, which we all know you can't really put aside, but just for sake of argument right now.
I think it might standardize
long as it
listening
was,
a
that
bit
was a
more
question. Yeah.
across the world. Because even just accents within like the US or within Canada, even the UK, as TV and other media become more prevalent, like accents die down quite a bit. I guess Japan's a great example of that as well. Like the local dialects exist, but the young people don't speak it to the same extent that their grandparents do by any means. And a lot of standardization is coming out of it. And now if AI is being spread out throughout the world and has the same accent, the same intonation, and everyone's mirroring and copying the same thing rather than individual people or whatever's left over of like these deep accents that used to exist, is that just going to kill it quicker? And is that better? Is that worse? I don't know. It's really hard to say something's better. Easier is not always better.
That sounds like very much a social question right there, doesn't it? About how much value does this degree of variety have in society versus, I guess, for us, for the purposes of the podcast or for our own field, we're looking at how much value does that kind of variation perhaps have for students in building up their ability to distinguish beyond just the standard, right? Because my English has definitely been trained by being in Japan for 30 years and having friends from all different kinds of countries, and also speaking Japanese more than I do English for the last 30 years. If I conducted all my classes in a neutral Midwestern newscaster accent, I'm sure that would be easier for students to understand in some ways. But by the same token, it wouldn't prepare them to experience the variety of world Englishes that some of them are going to run into, right? So what do we think about this?
Yeah, I think you're hitting on kind of one of the practical uses of TTS inside of a classroom, which a lot of these TTS applications, they're free out the gate. You can get like 10,000, 20,000 characters. So you can try them out. My favorite to use is 11 Labs, and 11 Labs has the ability to change the accent. You can mess around with a bunch of other stuff. You can mess around with kind of the intonation. Their version 3, the Alpha 3 model just came out, and you can actually put in like laughs, breaths, emotions. So you can put in brackets, you can put in an emotion like angry or happy or excited, and it'll say that preceding sentence in the emotion that you put in there. It is one of the most, in fact, I think it is pretty much, it is the best TTS out there right now. It's not even close, but that means it is a little expensive. I think their cheapest tier is around $5 per month, and that'll get you around 35,000 characters, which, to put that into, what does that mean? For a single teacher, it's plenty enough to produce what you need for your students. Whether that be, maybe you can generate some listening quizzes and export those files the audio files that you generate with the TTS. And like
that
was
going to be my next question, Joe. For teachers using that, I know a lot of teachers would want to export it and embed it or use it or keep it. But what about, does the licensing allow you to export and say, like, serve it from a blog that students would use for access that was limited only to your own student body or that sort of thing? Or, as Rob does, put it up on a site like Poodle that has an awful lot of other stuff like that. Is that also allowed under their licensing?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'd have to look into it, but I'm almost positive that whatever you produce from 11 Labs is considered, your property. You have created that. And so you're free to basically download that as your property and use that as you like. This is the whole reason behind the APIs that they offer through these applications. APIs being, basically you can use their application within your application. This is precisely what my company is doing with TiVo. We're using OpenAI's API, the Voice TTS API HD version in my app. and anything that's produced out of that is our property, and we can use that in our app, and yeah, it's totally fine. So as long as you're paying that, that monthly price, you're not pirating the software, which I don't know how you would be able to do that, then anything you produce with that is yours to use freely.
Interesting. Cool.
There's always ways to pirate.
Yeah. We'll leave
I can
that
give
to
some
you,
ideas
the
on a
expert.
different podcast.
There we go. But you use a lot of listening and TTS on Poodle as well for Sojo, don't you, Rob?
Yeah. So we have a few activities. We've dialed it back a bit since COVID. But during COVID, we created a bunch of stuff very quickly that was listening based. And we had this internal discussion as to how should we be recording everything with our own voices, or should we be using the built-in TTS? It was a few years ago, so it was okay. And there was I think we had like 12 people built into the Poodle. I'm not sure if that's a Poodle plugin that we used, or Moodle, because we use them interchangeably. Poodle is a plugin of Moodle. But we found like the better voices, and we came to the conclusion that having a mix of both, that TTS is becoming more common. It was pretty close. I don't think it was would have gotten a 4.3 back then, maybe like a 3.7 on that scale if I had to guess. But it was pretty close, and students should get used to these types of voices because we thought more companies might use it or it might come up. And that was a few years ago. But so we made sure to mix it so that they're not shadowing. Sometimes they're supposed to shadow the voice they hear and then record themselves like doing the shadowing part. We're like, oh, they're all going to sound like robots. So sometimes we should stop that. But then now the conversation should be, but they won't. If the robot sounds like a human and we don't have to hear our own voice. So sometimes we use it in class. When it was all kind of not right in front of me, it was easy when my voice, like, yeah, sure, you hear my voice. But now some of them aren't using headphones.
Yeah.
My voice keeps coming up repeatedly in the classroom. It's so embarrassing. It's not. It's just reading a script, but it's like, I like ice cream. And then sometimes it's like echoing, like, I like ice cream. I like it. Like, guys, I don't know if you're trying to prank me or not, but
Remmerswaal Inception, right there. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So, yeah, a few years ago we thought, TTS, they should be exposed to it, and that argument kind of seems even stronger. If we made the right choice, then I don't know. It's almost I don't know.
Now, if we get into the AI side of this, I feel like we could dig an extremely deep hole very, very quickly and probably for quite a long time. But I'd like to ask you guys something about the listening and TTS particularly related to this in terms of reading and as scaffolding for reading, because I know there's been some research done in this, but not a whole lot. And one of the things that it sounds like you did and that I did immediately after COVID started was take a lot of the reading texts that maybe I would have practiced with students and then encouraged them to read afterwards, and just start attaching audio files to them, and created lots of PDFs that had individual page recordings and that sort of thing, and let the students work through those. I'm sure they got very tired of my voice as far as that was going, but now they really seem to kind of like it, and okay, it's cool, whatever. But aside from that kind of thing, what kind of applications have you guys found most useful for this kind of listening practice? I use it as scaffolding for reading a lot. I use it just directly, obviously, as listening skill practice and that, and putting aside, direct interaction between the students where they're practicing speaking and listening. What's most effective? Where do you get the most return on using TTS of this kind or listening of this kind in the classroom?
Well, I would say, in my case, the most obvious, the best use case for TTS is just having a conversation with a chatbot. Right? I mean, you talk to it and then it talks back to you. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
You can deploy that at scale in a way that is impossible with a single teacher and 30 students. So that is probably one of the most kind of no-brainer ways to use TTS. I mean, TTS is built into, that whole ChatGPT or whatever you use, Claude or anything like that. But I would say for a more isolated, just using the TTS, one of the really interesting use cases that I have done is using 11 Labs, because it has a voice cloning feature. If you're not familiar what voice cloning is, you basically take a 2-minute snippet of your student's voice, and it can be in English or Japanese, it doesn't matter. And then you can generate a cloned voice. And you may be wondering, well, how does this turn into a learning experience? Well, it's one thing to be able to imagine how to speak really well in English, but it's a whole another thing when you show them their voice speaking natural English. My students have just been shocked.
They hear
They're
themselves.
just like, what? Oh my gosh, that's me. As a musician myself, this is a huge part of the learning process. You go to gigs, you go watch drummers, and one of the best ways to learn is to just watch what they're doing. And especially drummers that sound exactly like you, when you see them doing stuff that you do, but they do it better, it just blows your mind, and you learn so much. And so that's what I've done with my students in the past, is I've taken their voice and cloned it for them and showed them. And we do this almost every year for our speech contest, so that students can listen. Before TTS, I would just do it. I would record it for them, but it's not my voice, right? And so voice cloning their voice, and then inputting their entire speech, and then sending it back to them, they're like, oh my gosh. It's something weird. I can't even describe what happens inside their mind, but just hearing their own voice, it just something ticks, and it feels like it's just a lot better practice than somebody else recording.
It's like a really powerful kind of self-modeling going on right there.
You just need 2 minutes of them, just one 2-minute clip of them speaking is all it takes to clone.
Yeah, I think 11 Labs requires a 2-minute sample. It may be even shorter now. They're getting better and better and better. It used to be a 5-minute sample, but it's amazing. And then if you use there's another app out there. I think it's Gen Speak or something like that, or Gen AI. They will actually, if you give them a 2-minute sample, they will allow you to change languages. So if you want to hear what you sound like speaking Swahili, you can do that.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing, actually.
I have heard of that. Yeah, and then
I think it's Gen Speak or something like that. I can't remember.
Right. If you need to create instructional videos in another language, like in your student's L1, if that's not yours, you can then go ahead and write it out and have it done in your voice, as fluent as you want.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, Japan's having a problem with anime voices or famous people's voices being taken and cloned. And I think we're providing a reason why this technology should be legal. I had students show me, I teach a 21st century media class, and the better students are teaching me stuff in that class, so I can teach the other students in following years. And that was one of the things they taught, was how to go to YouTube and take their favorite character's voice and put it through the system. And then as they speak, it sounds like the character. And they were, it was live switching their voice, and they were saying, oh, you tried to do the mannerisms of this character. So they haven't gone quite as far as just typing it in with, right? If they used 11 Labs, it might be even better. But they were doing it so they can live react. They can just change their voice if they were on a video call or something, or if we're recording a different video. And seeing that, how easy it was, how quickly they could do it, and it was all free tools, was really crazy. But now to hear it's even easier when you're doing it for like this educational reason, if you pay for 11 Labs, that's crazy.
Well, this is where we're still talking about listening right now, so I don't want to get into the intellectual property side of the discussion too deeply yet. But this is really a point where you hear people talking about how much of a property interest should you have in your own voice, in your own mode of expression, and that is absolutely every word that you say actually creative output, which you should have some degree of copyright control over or not. Is my extremely unique voice something that I should not allow other people to be able to copy from online videos or stuff I put up on Facebook before? Because, that ship has sailed. Look, there's so much out there on social media for most
Jeff,
of us.
you need to
and
go to
for
the
our
copyright,
kids.
the trademark office or something and get your voice trademarked. To be a
For
millionaire.
how long is it?
That's on my to-do list, man. That's on my to-do list right there, absolutely. But, you begin to wonder when we have this world where now we can do this stuff so easily. It is trivial, ultimately trivial, to take that to sample someone else's voice, expression, manner, even artistic expressions when it comes to a style of manga production or a style of videography. At some point soon, probably a directorial style for how action flicks have been created or something like that. And if you can lift that and use it, how do we start to decide that kind of thing? It's an extremely fascinating subject for me, and when we get into the next section, I'm probably going to want to talk about it a lot. But anyway, sorry, you just reminded me ahead of time there.
Yeah. Well, I think it will be
a pretty good segue.
Yeah.
Well,
let's see everyone back then for section 2 after this break.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
Yep.
All right, welcome back. We're on to section 2. Now, if you thought, why wasn't there an advertisement in that break? Well, you're welcome to contact us and see your own company advertised right there. Contact us any way you'd like. We'd be happy to review your ad. All right, AI and copyright. Where do things stand now? Geoff, I think you have a little bit of an update for us.
Well, I have a bit of an update, but Joe brought to my attention last week a major court decision in the U.S. With Anthropic winning at least some parts of an argument about it. So, Joe, could I ask you to outline exactly what happened with the Anthropic case right there?
Sure, yeah. And just to, kind of preface everything here, we are not lawyers. We are not giving, professional advice or legal advice here. So do not take anything that we say with a grain of salt. Make sure you do your own research.
We'll take everything we say with a grain of salt, then.
Yes, sorry. Yes, the opposite.
A whole shaker of
Even
salt,
our teaching.
actually. Yeah.
Anyhow, the case that just wrapped up, one of several, OpenAI is also being sued right now, I think by New York Times or somebody. Basically, several publishers, through some means, found out that Anthropic was using both pirated and copyrighted, materials from their publishing companies to train their model. And so the court just ruled on this, and they kind of slapped, they slapped their hand and basically said you can't use pirated materials to do this. You have to pay for it. But the more important ruling here is that the judge ruled that basically what is happening when these AI companies, specifically Anthropic, when they take copyrighted material that's been paid for and they put it into their model and train it, that the output that is generated from that material, as long as it's not copying it verbatim, is basically the exact same process that a student does when they read a book and they write an essay about that book. So this is a huge important ruling because it relaxes the copyright laws. If any of you out there were just like, oh my goodness, there's probably tons of copyrighted material that hasn't been paid for in this model. We don't know what it is. And if I use it and I start producing stuff, am I going to be liable as well?
Right.
And this ruling outright just totally says that, listen, as long as Anthropic has paid for the copyrighted materials that have been used to train their models, you don't need to worry about the output that is generated by these models. Now, this is a United States ruling. So, the courts in the United States, if you're a U.S. citizen and you live there, then you have to abide by those rules. But, JALT being in Japan, we have a little bit different set of rules. But it's important to understand that, this ruling coming out of the U.S. courts is really good. It's in favor of being a little bit more relaxed in terms of allowing just normal everyday users to not have to worry about the output that they have. But wherever the U.S. courts go, kind of the globe kind of goes as well. But I'm interested to hear a little bit more about Japan and how do they treat these similar cases, because it's my understanding that I heard from Geoff that Japan has already got a pretty well substantiated copyright kind of law in place.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons why your mentioning the Anthropic case caught my attention. It's because people have talked about Japan being ahead of the curve on this for a while, because back in 2019, even before the chatbots came out and before the whole OpenAI chatbot ChatGPT thing became a part of the zeitgeist, Japan already had a specific provision written into their Copyright Act. It's Article 30-4, if you want to know what it is, and it broadly allows, I'm quoting here, the ingestion and use of copyrighted works for information analysis, including the purpose of training AI models. Now, look, there are a lot of distinctions in there, but that is codified. That's part of the law that, as you said, in Japan, pretty much whatever you want to plug in to the training set that is being used to create your model, you can go ahead and do that. It's an enormous, because of this, Japan is often called a machine learning paradise, because they've gone ahead and they've explicitly allowed it, even for copyrighted works, even for commercial purposes. Okay, the UK and the EU and that they've restricted use of copyrighted works only to non-commercial purposes, which is, I believe, intended to be a carve-out for education and educational use of AI. With the way AIs are being trained right now, though, it's pretty hard to distinguish between educational use and commercial use, because everybody's using a huge sample of models just to try to figure out what works best, and just experimenting and learning with them, right? Whereas the US's case, what you're talking about right there, this specific situation with Anthropic, they didn't rewrite the law, and there wasn't a specific provision of law related to AI that was being argued here. U.S. copyright law has what's called a fair use test, and there are 4 different elements, the 4 factors that are continued for that. The purpose and character of the use. Is it transformative? Is it changing how the material actually is in the real world? The nature of the work. Nonfiction has a much lower bar. You can use that more often than you can fiction. Fiction is considered more creative. The amount, substantiality of the portion. How much do you use? How high a percentage of what you're using? And then the effect of the use on the potential market. Money. Everybody's always about the money, right? In Anthropic's case, and in the case that you referred to with the New York Times, both of those are cases in which it's been argued that it's possible that the AI is impacting the market pretty hard, and that's why it's really a big decision, as you mentioned, that the judge recognized that, look, this is actually fair use because the other elements of the test were met to a significant enough degree that the impact on the market wasn't the deciding factor. You don't often see that. That's a really big thing.
Well, even, because once you mentioned about Japan, I started looking into it too. And once you start getting into education use, it's even more relaxed, because you don't even have to own the copyrighted material.
No, you can pirate
So if you
Wow.
if you borrow a textbook from somebody else, and you take a picture of that and you start generating lessons using AI by uploading that file into, say, ChatGPT or something like that, that's totally fine. You can totally do that as long as you're not verbatim copying the content out of there in large portions, and as long as it's for educational purpose. So educational purpose even broadens that current ruling, that current law in Japan, to even more relaxed state where you don't even have to actually own the materials that you're generating, you're inputting into the AI and generating output.
So let's use an example right here, because I know that Rob is a huge manga and anime fan. He's just, really big. He got like several groups he just follows around Japan and that. But could we then go through and copy, for example, the entirety of the Conan series in manga, that sort of thing, use that to train an AI, and then produce AI manga in the Conan style with Conan characters for the purposes of foreign language education, second language acquisition? What do you think? You think that would fall within this educational exception we're talking about here? Because I know there are a lot of people that probably try to do that. Rob, first in line.
Yeah, make them talk about their favorite food.
Exactly. I don't know.
Well, this would actually, there is a caveat here, because length still does matter. If you were to take the entire series and do that, then that would probably be an issue. But if you were to take portions of it, portions of each episode or something like that, or portions of each book, then I think that would be acceptable. The thing is, it just has to be a reasonable length. You can't be verbatim, scanning and copying and uploading all this stuff into ChatGPT and training it and then outputting stuff. But I think probably the most common case here would be just take a picture of your textbook to show the AI what you're doing in the class, and based on that, have it output a lesson plan for you, or some type of description to help you explain what's in the textbook to the students. Obviously nobody's going to knock on your door and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" But this would represent totally fine. That's totally fine. And I've actually had colleagues who have said, are you sure that's okay? Can you do that? Like, I'm not sure that's all right. And I think a lot of people are just on edge, and I totally get it. I totally understand it. But something like this, as long as it's for education use, totally fine.
I guess that's an important thing to know coming to our conference, because it's like you said, no one's going to come knocking on your door, but you might not want to advertise that you did this in your conference presentation if you thought it's a gray area, or worse, if you thought you were doing something illegal and didn't want to get caught. But if you think, this isn't even a gray area, this is open to do, you'd probably be more likely to present your findings on this.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Robert, because I am presenting my app there, and my app has an auto-generation scenario where you can take a picture of a textbook or your materials, doesn't matter, whatever it is, and you upload it into our chatbot creation screen, and then it auto-generates a scenario based off of that uploaded file. And our company had to go through this statute, like reading the Article 30-4 and the education use purposes and stuff, and we went through and made sure this was all good. We have a little disclaimer in there too that says make sure that we even go a step further and say that make sure that you own the materials that you're uploading here. You don't have to, as I mentioned. So yeah, it's all about just informing yourself instead of being freaked out or kind of panicking and telling everybody, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, or on the other end of it, just being totally oblivious to it. You got to look at this stuff yourself, or just listen to the JALT Call podcast.
Exactly.
Well, let's just make sure I'm understanding. So if I have a textbook, I can take a picture or two from the textbook, put it into whatever AI I want, and then if it comes out with a lesson plan, I can just use that lesson plan unchanged myself, right? The law doesn't care about that part. there's a limit on how much I can put in, but whatever comes out, I've never seen an AI be perfect with its output, but if it was,
that, I mean, there's obviously there's a caveat to that. If you uploaded that content and instructed the AI to copy it, and copy large portions of it and put it into my lesson, this might be something that might be a little bit weird. I would say though, if it's taking parts of it, like say for like an A/B conversation within that page that you took a picture of, and it's inserting that into your lesson, I think that would be totally reasonable. You can't quote me on that, but I would think that would be reasonable. But if you're literally taking a picture to copy all of that content and then trying to sell it on the internet, saying this is startup 2, here you go, and then you try to sell it, that would be bad. But I mean, even in an extreme case, even if you did copy the output from there exactly, as long as you're using it in your class as an educational purpose, not to give your student a book because that lesson they forgot their book or something like that, but just to use it in some educational, informative manner, I think that would be fine too. But
this is one place where the Japanese law has a pretty interesting distinction written into it here, and that's distinguishing whether you're using the copyrighted content that's training the AIs, going into the AI training set, going to be used in creation of the output for information analysis, which is really, like you said, broadly allowed for training and is allowable even with pirated content, versus using it for, again quoting here, the purpose of enjoyment of the thoughts or sentiments expressed in the copyrighted work. And that's generally not allowed if it unjustly harms the copyright holder's interests somehow. Right. And that's why the educational test here has a much lower bar to clear, because the general idea is going to be that you're not going to be using it in a way that unjustly harms copyright holder interests if you're using it just within your own classroom, with your own students, for non-commercial purposes. So this is something to keep in mind when you're thinking about it right here. We are encouraging everybody to upload their presentation, assets, resource folder to the Edzilla system before they arrive, and check that the presentation works before they get there too. That's a mistake that I've made. Poster presenters, be sure you have a QR code on your poster that links through, and also contact details. And be sure you have a ticket. All right, thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
Visit Ego AI today. When you contact Ego AI, mention you heard them on the JALT Call podcast.